Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and join the board in the pledge. Hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing and join the board in a moment of silence as we honor our veterans and our first responders. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to February. Tonight, I'm going to just leave a lot of the normal conversation that we talk about during our reports to my fellow board members. I want to talk about something that some of you may be aware of or not be aware of, but the governor has put out her proposed budget. She made her State of the State address a few weeks ago, and today she released her tentative budget. In that budget, there is a part that concerns, obviously, much of it concerns municipalities and the village, but one section in particular that may get overshadowed by things like state aid for education and infrastructure, but something that is very important to us and something that we are following here in the village of Mineola, and frankly, mayors and town supervisors and county officials are following as well. And I know that a couple of weeks ago, when the governor made her State of the State address, that there was a press conference held by the 3 county supervisors, and that somehow the issue with her housing compact was made into a partisan issue because the 3 supervisors happened to be Republican. And that is not the case at all. It actually happens to be a bipartisan, but rather suburban versus urban, or downstate versus upstate, or local home rule versus centralized, mandates from Albany. So what this boils down to is the governor's proposing a housing compact similar to what she proposed last year, and then after pressure from local governments and elected officials, she wisely, in my opinion, withdrew from the budget last year. Last year, she had included what are called ADUs, accessory dwelling units, where essentially people can convert garages, basements, attics, accessory dwellings on their property into legal dwelling units. Obviously, that's not something that we support. We actually go out of our way and have gone out of our way for many, many years, long before me, to combat that type of illegal housing. And essentially what the governor's proposal last year would have done is it would have legalized much of that, and it would have taken it out of our hands. Well, this year, the governor is doubling down on ADUs. Not only is she once again suggesting that villages and cities and towns allow for ADUs, but she is proposing a system whereby villages and towns and municipalities would be mandated to build a certain amount of affordable housing, transit-oriented development housing, workforce housing next to train stations or transit hubs. And if you take a map, and within a half mile, by the way, and if you start to think in your mind of what the Long Island Railroad looks like with the Main Line, the Oyster Bay Line, the Port Washington Line, the Hempstead Line, the Long Beach Line, if you start drawing half-mile circles around every single train station, you're basically going to cover all of Nassau County. And as if that is not bad enough, and by the way, as you are well aware, we've been doing a lot of this on our own, with local determinations, with local input, with local decisions, where it makes sense for us to do it or not do it. What the governor's proposal would do is eliminate our ability to control our zoning in our village. And so a developer that comes into the village and is told no by the village would then go to a state agency in Albany, potentially someone who has never been to Mineola. And that agency would essentially override our decisions, our zoning, and allow for that person to develop the property or that institution to develop the property as they see fit. Obviously, we as a board are against anything that would take our local power, especially in terms of zoning, to control what kind of development we want to allow and not allow in the village. And I'm hoping that the governor, just as she did last year, will come to her senses and realize that, you know, Nassau County has 64 villages, the most counties of any, the most villages of any county in New York State. The town of North Hempstead has, I believe, 32 villages, the most of any town in New York State. We want that quality of life for ourselves. We want that kind of local home rule for ourselves, and we certainly hope that the governor will rethink her focus on forcing housing down our throats. We have done our fair share to provide for housing in Nassau County over the last 10 years, and we certainly do not need the governor or anyone else to tell us how to go about doing that. We're doing a good job, I think, ourselves, and we certainly do not need to acquiesce or give that power to the governor. There's more components to the housing compact that involve subdivision of lots, essentially streamlining zoning, changing zoning. And by the way, many of these things we've either done or entertained or we've created overlay districts to do. However, we've done it on our terms, on our ability to make those decisions and to say yes or no to projects, whether or not they fit. No one knows our community better than we do. So I expect to hear a lot more from that, but I and the board, and I hope I represent the residents in saying that we do not want the governor or anyone from Albany sticking their nose in our business, because at the end of the day, we want to maintain our suburban quality of life, and what may work in Queens or what may work somewhere else doesn't work here. And mind you, that villages and towns in downstate Nassau, Suffolk County would have to do a 3% increase in housing. Upstate, where there's plenty of land and plenty of space, they would have to do 1%. So where we don't have much space, we have to do 3 times the amount of development. And then the question that has not been answered is, do we, as a village, get credit for what we've already done? Or do we start at 0 with everyone else going forward, and we have to do 3% beyond what we have already done? And I'll finish with this. Last week, I was on a conference call with the other mayors, with the representatives of the governor, to talk about this issue exactly. And as many of you know, I teach high school. I teach 9th graders. My 9th graders from time to time have to do presentations and projects. My 9th graders would have done a better job at the presentation than the governor's representatives did. It was a debacle. It was a Zoom call. The internet was going in and out. The commissioner was at an airport. Mind you, they made the time, they made the day, they made the place. The mayors all participated. We could not speak. We were muted the whole time. We were only allowed to ask questions by typing them out, which obviously doesn't lend itself to a lot of dialogue. And they said that they wanted to include us and they wanted us to be part of the discussion and that there's plenty of time. Well, that was last week. This week she presented her budget. The budget is due April 1st. That is not a lot of time. A lot of time would have been last month, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Come down here, talk to us, see what we are doing, see what we have done. And actually, I was on that phone call, and as they were talking, it almost looks like they've plagiarized what we have done. And I think a lot of what we have done is very good, and it does fit in some parts, but it doesn't fit everywhere. Where are you going to put some of these dwellings, if you will? So stay tuned, more to come. I have reached out to both of our state senators and our state assemblymen, and I believe that all three of them stand with the village. They understand how Nassau County works in terms of villages and local home rule and local government, and that people pay a premium for that. They appreciate that. They appreciate that we are the government closest to the people, and I think that they appreciate that we do not want to give up, especially zoning power, because once we give up zoning power to the state, then, you know, it's just, they're going to do whatever they want in our community. So I strongly urge the governor to reconsider this one-size-fits-all housing compact for the state, but especially down here in Nassau County. So with that, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo the sentiments of the mayor regarding this issue. This is a quality of life issue here in our village that we strongly are against. So I encourage you to educate yourself on it, read into it. Don't just read the headlines and what's going on, because it could all be biased one way or the other. So look into it, educate yourself on it, and contact our local legislators to show them that you are against it and encourage them to go against this and support getting this out of the budget. In a totally different note, it is Restaurant Week here in Nassau County, so suburban quality of life. And I'm going to encourage you, we have 2 restaurants here in our village, both Eric's on Old Country Road and Castorino's on Jericho Turnpike, which are part of the Restaurant Week special prefix pricing. So I encourage you to use it as a reason to get out there, get some really yummy food in some very good restaurants here in our very own village, and support local, and have some fun for the night. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I just want to, because it's changed for this year, our 2 state senators are Senator Martins, who knows the village well, and we also have Senator Kevin Thomas. So we have a Democrat and a Republican who both represent the village. So if you live east of Roslyn, likely your representative in the state senate would be Senator Kevin Thomas. If you live west of Roslyn Road, your state senator should be Jack Martin. So please reach out to them, reach out to their offices. I certainly think that Senator Martins understands better than most people what we are dealing with. I did meet with Senator Thomas. I think he understands as well, but it wouldn't hurt to hear from the residents, his new residents in his district, because he did not represent Mineola prior to the redistricting and prior to this election. So, and our state assemblyman continues to be Ed Ra for the entirety of the village. Mr. Casado.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. So last night I had the opportunity to attend the monthly meeting of our Mineola Historical Society, and joining me was our Deputy Mayor and Trustee Solosky. It was a great meeting last night, very informative. And the reason why I wanted to mention that is because I wanted to again call attention and highlight the efforts that's being done by our Historical Society. So much work being done, documenting stuff, photographing stuff. They're doing an absolutely great job. Last night was really a fun meeting.
It was.
Very informative.
Great, thank you. Trustee Clark?
Good evening, thank you. Recently, I attended a dinner at the Irish American Society. It was the installation of officers for the coming year. P.J. Smith was elected president and sworn in for another term. His first order of business is helping prepare for the parade on Sunday, March 5th. It's the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Mineola. It steps off at 1 o'clock and begins on County Seat Drive on Old Country Road, and then goes to Jericho Turnpike between Mineola Boulevard and Willis Avenue. I invite you all to come out and watch the parade, join in on it. If you have an organization that you'd like to march, just call the society, and they can give you the paperwork to sign up. And have a good evening.
Thank you, Trustee Clark. Trustee Solosky.
Thank you. I echo the sentiments of the mayor and the board about the governor's housing compact. I think it would destroy the work that many boards have done to keep our suburban lifestyle intact. So I, again, as the mayor said, I urge you to contact the senators to express your displeasure, or read up on it, and if it is your displeasure, to please express that. And then the last thing I want to say is more like a public service announcement, that there is a scam centering mainly in Mineola, and I just want the residents to be aware that there are texts and emails going out in Reverend Malcolm Burns' name asking for money for Corpus Christi. Those are not from him, so if you receive an email or a text, please ignore it and do not fall for it. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee. Okay, with that, I will, just one thing I wanted to bring up is we had our police forum here last week, and the police officers were here to explain some of the things that are going on. You may have seen that there was a press conference that they did nab a catalytic converter ring, and so there's been a slight drop-off on catalytic converter thefts, but there are other things that are going on, break-ins and things of that nature. So they gave us a bunch of ideas and tips and tools to certainly do a better job at trying to prevent those things. With that, this Friday, I'm going to be meeting with the MTA police chief to discuss our concerns about the MTA police presence, or lack thereof, at the Mineola train station. And hopefully, this will be a productive meeting, and we will get some more MTA police presence down at the train station, which we are told should be done by early April, fully functional. I mean, it's obviously functioning now, but completely done by early April, but we will certainly keep you in touch. Okay, with that, Mr. DeFont?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to meet you all for the first time. My
You
name's
as well.
Jason DeFont. Yeah, I live in Roselle Street. I do have a couple things to say about the housing, for sure. I don't understand it for us. I mean, you guys have seen how many apartments have come up in the last 10 years, right? Things have completely changed around here. And so, I think that's one thing to really drive home to the governor is like, we have done our part already. And maybe there are other towns that haven't, but I'm not here for them. This is about Mineola, right? And even with our apartments, I've noticed things have totally changed. Traffic's worse, but there are more people and like unsavory people. It's not from the apartments, but like you were saying about the MTA. They totally need to be around, because I remember I was driving at 7:30 in the morning right next to CVS. Some guy and his wife, he's totally exposed himself urinating on the side of a building, like right there on Jericho. So that was pretty gross. But further about the population increase that they want to do, I think another important thing to keep in mind is environmental impacts. I mean, the ozone is it's stationary. And so when it depletes, it's not moving. So over Nassau County, if our ozone goes away, if it's not away already, it's going to be made worse with more people, right? I mean, that's just obvious. And further, the aquifers in the ground, the environment's going to be totally messed up, obviously. And, they want to completely make buildings electric, but they don't care about the aquifers here or the ozone, so you know how that is. I think that's basically, if you don't mind.
If I agree, I didn't bring that up, but one of the issues, and I'm going to be putting it in my letter to the governor, is there's really no accommodation to ask us, do we have enough water? Do we have enough sewer capability? Do we have enough infrastructure to be able to support, building 3% in a 3-year period and keep on going? So those are questions. It's very nice to make sound bites and say, we need more affordable housing. We need to create housing because our young people are moving away. I'm not an economist, but I'm pretty sure that it probably is driven by prices and other factors that drive young people away. As far as the number of people, and I always point this out, and I probably can't point this out in the next 10 years, but more people lived in Mineola in 1970 than do today. More people lived in Nassau County in 1970 than do today. The population of Nassau County in 1970 was greater than it is in 2020, or than it was in 2020. So we had enough housing in 1970, everyone lived here, and yet with fewer people, now we don't have enough housing. I don't buy it, I don't believe it, and I think it's really about taking a city-centric approach and trying to implement it here. And this has been going on for years. Governor Cuomo tried to dissolve villages. I think what they want to do is control us. They don't want us to have local authority, local autonomy, local regulations, because they see us as a bunch of little fiefdoms that they can't control. And so this is a way to do it. But they really haven't, to your point, they haven't addressed how are we going to answer the water issue, the sewer issue, the traffic issue, the parking issues. And those are things that we, when we approve or don't approve of plans, we can mitigate that. We can see if it works or doesn't work, if there is enough parking, but if that power is taken out of our hands and the developer is going to straight to a state agency that from 300 miles away is gonna say yes or no, when they don't understand what it's like to stand on the corner of Mineola Boulevard and First Street, for example. So, and to your point, quality of life issues, what I would ask you and every resident, because I did it, and our village clerk does it a lot, and people reach out to me, anytime you see something like that, somebody urinating, somebody, exposing themselves, call 911. I called the commanding officer of the 3rd Precinct when somebody reported something to me about one of, as you say, unsavory characters was doing something that we wouldn't condone, and he got right on it. So if you see it, I know that you're on your way and it's gross and you're going to work, but just dial 911 and say, hey, I just saw this person, and that person may, need help. They may need, they may be intoxicated, they may be on drugs. We don't know that person's history, but I certainly would encourage, and that's gonna be part of my conversation with the police chief of the MTA, because a lot of these issues revolve around and start at the train station. And that's been my ongoing conversation with the commanding officer of the 3rd Precinct, is those quality of life issues, for sure.
Totally, totally agree about the MTA thing. I do have just a couple quick things to say. Well, I would say, to speak their language, the environmental thing. I know you know business better than me, it seems like, infrastructure and everything. You're the mayor, okay? But
I'm a teacher, so I'm not a
also-
businessman. But I don't know if I know business, but.
well, then, we both went to school. We know how the environment gets impacted by more people, and they're so adamant about that, so show that to them, you know what I mean? And then just a couple more things. I would say the ADUs. When I've grown up here my whole life, and I didn't really understand why Mineola is so strict about the ADUs. And to go further, if that were to show more to the governor, like, now we're doing ADUs, and I'm not talking about building more, but basements or something like that. I don't know, I think that's something to consider. Meeting halfway, maybe that's a good idea.
And we do have provisions in our code that allow for people to legalize and maintain certain structures
Right.
and certain uses, but we control that. Our
Yeah.
zoning board controls that. Our code controls that. And this is under the guise of, a couple of years ago when we had those floods back in September, and unfortunately some people in Queens in basement apartments were flooded out and lost their lives. That is terrible. And so because that happened, they're like, well, we need to legalize basement apartments, and we need to allow for basement apartments so that we can monitor them.
Yeah.
Don't take a tragedy and now use it as a way to get into our code, as a way to get into our home rule local government, right? Because we have building inspectors, we have a building department, we have a code, we have attorneys, we have a court that will address those issues at the local level. So there is ways in our code that exist for people to come here and say, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to be able to put a livable attic. Yeah, we have that in the village. That has to be sprinklered, that has to be accessible, that has to have ingress and egress. Same thing with basements. we control that. We have that ability. We don't need the state to tell us what to do.
Yes, I know that. What I was saying is, you know, maybe some more leniency is needed because that's just from my own observation. I mean, one of my good friends, he started a whole construction business, and I'm like, you know, one day we're gonna get my house, we're gonna expand it, we're gonna put 2 more garages on there. And he's like, yeah, if Mineola accepts that. And so I understood what he was saying, and yeah. And then the final thing that I wanna say is, you mentioned Restaurant Week, and I'm happy, you know, that Casarinos, I'm over by Roselle, I'm happy Casarinos is there. When are they gonna, you know, be moving? I'm happy they have tables outside, but like, I walk over there, I go to North Shore Farms, I have to go in the parking lot every time, because you can't really walk through there. So I hope,
Obviously, that was done during COVID. We'll take a look at it.
Right,
haven't
I
been
mean,
down
I
there in a
think
while,
it's-
but we did allow them for a short time to even take spaces in the parking lot, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
yeah.
But they're not doing that, right?
No. Now
Okay.
it's just,
I will, yeah, the
it's way
sidewalk
past
should be
due.
for you to walk on. We will,
at least have them
revisit
make
that.
it look good, because all the plants are dead.
Dead.
It's like not,
Yeah.
it's not nice.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Mr. Wei Gao? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, how are you?
First time here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Always
I'm
welcome.
new here.
You new to the village?
Yes.
How long have you lived here?
About a year and 4 months.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome.
45 years.
All right.
All right.
Goodness. Yes. So totally new. This is our first house.
Okay, congratulations, and thank you for choosing Mineola.
Right. Yeah. I see Mineola as a very, very hot spot for people living like around the New York City and the Long Island. My wife works in Port Washington,
Mhm.
and I work in the city, so I choose Mineola.
Great.
Yeah. I think today I made a very wise choice. Okay.
I think so
agree.
too.
Um,
We all agree.
Yeah. By the way, I live on 155 Walker Road.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I have to tell you that on Monday when I opened my mailbox, and I had a big heart attack. Okay, in the mail there was a village tax assessment, and there is a 80K assessment hike. Okay, on the ledger. And I've discussed with a couple of other residents, neighbors, and they all see this regardless of improvements on their house. Okay, and they are, I think there are around like 18 to 20 people on the thread I create on the Facebook discussion group. Okay, so. And I see that on the assessment notification later, it says change in the property assessment doesn't necessarily indicate that your tax will change.
Mhm.
It is possible, but as a learned case, it will. And it will increase, most likely not decrease. Okay, that's from the experience of life, right? So, so before like I'm going to grieve the assessment, okay, and then as a request for information, I have several questions, okay, and it's shared by other villagers, neighbors. I've discussed, okay.
Okay.
So the first one is the village assessment is different from the county assessment, and there
Correct.
is a wide gap between the two, right?
Mhm.
So why are they like this?
Okay, you want me to answer that now or at the end?
Up to you.
Okay, so yes, we do our own roll, and we do our own roll every year on the assessed value of your house, market trends. We all got the same letter, by the way.
Yep.
Mine went up more than yours. And this is based on market trends and what we try. And by the way, this is not us, not the board. There is a board of assessors that, under New York State law, through our, the company that we use is called SVS. They create the roll for the village portion of your taxes only, not the school taxes, not the county taxes. So that
Sure.
letter that you got only affects your village taxes,
Village
which is about 11 to 12% of your overall. So if you pay $10,000 in taxes, only about 1,000 or 1,100 would be the village portion. The rest would be the school,
Yeah.
the town, and the county.
Yeah.
So having said that, this Board of Assessors, and again, I'm not an economist, but this all has to be done under the overseeing of, there's a New York State Office of Real Property Services called ORPS. The Office of Real Property Services, Taxes, makes sure we have to be within 5% of the assessed value, okay? So what does that mean? That doesn't mean, so your assessed value may have gone up 16%. That's what mine did.
Yeah.
That does not mean your taxes are going up 16%.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I will go on record, they won't go up 16%, okay? It's going to be based on our budget and on our tax levy, which
Yeah.
we will determine in April and May, okay? And you're correct that chances are that they will go up, right? Because your assessed value went up. What that means is the Board of Assessors takes a look at market trends. What did houses sell for in Mineola, in your neighborhood last year? How many houses sold in your neighborhood in Mineola for last year? What was the median price? And what they try to do is keep it fair, right? So that you and your neighbor aren't paying like this if your house isn't this different. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but going back to the county, what the county did and does is the last time that they did an assessment was 4 or 5 years ago,
Oh,
and then they froze it, right? Which artificially, all it does is kick the can, in my opinion, kicks the can down the road, right? So now, that's why you see your county assessment is lower, because they froze it 5 years ago, because they didn't want to give you the sticker shock of having it go up so much, right? What we do is year to year, and I've been here long enough that I've seen years where the assessed value comes down.
Okay.
You know, 2008, 2009, 2011, 2012, my assessed value went down, okay? So it does happen, and it's really comparing apples to apples. There are 5,000 homes in Mineola. It's broken up into sections, and then they determine the market trends. So when you moved and bought your house in Mineola, if you paid a lot for your house, let's just say, that is going to drive up the market trends in
Yeah.
that area, and therefore the assessed value. So now, what you got, that letter that I got, that everybody got, doesn't mean that that's what your house is worth. That's not the market value, because
Yeah.
your house is worth more than that, I'm sure, okay? Because usually that number is not market value, but it's assessed value. So, however, you can, if you believe that your house is here and your neighbor's house is here, and his house is bigger and better, and he put in a bunch of new things, and he should pay more than you, you have the ability to grieve.
Yeah.
And you could grieve your taxes 2 ways. If you are already using a grievance company, then you could just call them and ask them to add the village to the grievance, okay? Or you can come here on February 21st to Village Hall from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.,
Yeah.
okay? And now a lot of people will say, oh, that's President's Week, and, you know, that's vacation, I'm away with my kids. Unfortunately, it's not up to us. New York State says it has to be the 3rd Tuesday of February is grievance day. It's
Okay.
the only day that we can grieve. So now you come here and you bring pictures, you bring information, you bring whatever documentation you have. There will be a Board of Assessment review. I believe there's 3 people on the Board of Assessment review, and they will listen to your case, and they will determine if you have been over-assessed or not.
Okay.
And then they could lower your assessed value.
They could bring the application beforehand, so.
Okay, so you can bring the application before the 21st. And if you ever have any questions, anybody, I know Facebook is a great tool, but that is not where you're going to get answers normally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm certainly not a tax expert.
Mhm.
And again, like I said, we are not the Board of Assessors. The Board of Assessors is a separate board. These are professionals in housing market, in real estate, in banking, and we use an outside company called SVS that also helps us putting this role together. And then all of this has to be done under the umbrella of ORPS, okay, which is the Office of Real Property Services or Taxes. Okay?
Mhm.
And I just want to be clear that
Mhm.
the assessment letter that you had,
Yeah.
that you got, that we all got, that everybody got,
Mhm.
has no impact on your school taxes.
Mhm.
That is the largest part of your bill.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to guess, but what we're talking about, if your assessed value went up 14%, your taxes are not going up 14%.
Mhm.
We're talking about maybe $100 or $150 a year total for your village taxes.
Mhm.
So we're not talking about thousands of dollars. You're not going to go from paying $1,500 a year to $3,000 a year. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be sticker shock. And I just want to remind you, I think most people who live here understand this. With that small part of your tax bill, the 11%, which for the average homeowner in Mineola is probably in the $1,300 to $1,600 range, $1,300 to $1,600 range.
Okay.
You get a pool, you get parks, you get ball fields, sanitation, snow plowing, Department of Public Works, fire department, building
free
department,
concerts.
village hall, free concerts in the park, fireworks. You get all of those things. And again, I don't want to minimize any increase. We all feel it too. And I certainly wish, and I sat down with the assessors before these letters went out, and I said, hey, is there anything we can do? And they said, not really, because ORPS, we can't tell somebody that your house is worth $300,000 when last year 10 houses in your neighborhood sold for $700,000. We can't make up a number. It has to be based on market trends, and it has to be within a certain margin of error. We have to be close, or else ORPS tells us do it again.
Yes. So that pertains to the second question, like, you just answered, ORPS is doing that, and Board of Assessment is doing these reviews, and we very much would like to understand how they do this, and as you say, it is a very complicated process. I mean, a lot of residents complain, hey, I'm getting like 100K hike for nothing, no improvement, right? And I here have this building permit change, and I get 80K, right? Probably, yeah. So probably like these two houses are just next to the door, right? I mean, side by side. So we very much like to understand their study report of the market.
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be a question that you would ask, and I don't want to give you the wrong information, because again, I'm not a tax expert, I'm not the Board of Assessors, and I don't want to misspeak, but that could be something that either you could stop by Village Hall, okay? Or you can, see Mr. Rivera, and he'll try to get you that answer, or come to the grievance day and ask that question. I do know that this is something that happens in any village or any municipality that has their own role, like we do. So, and the fact that when I didn't make any improvements to my house last year either, and it went up, as much as yours, not because of the improvements that I made, but because of the market trends.
Yeah.
And now I anticipate, and again, I'm not in real estate or taxing, but what I've heard is that the prices are starting to come back down. So next year, and again, I'm not predicting, we may see the opposite happen. We may see your assessed value may actually come down. And that has happened. If I go back, I have those letters saved, and it kind of goes up a little, comes down a little bit. And this year, it went up considerably because of market trends. And what we want at the end of the day, we don't want to pay more taxes. We don't want to, have you pay more taxes, but we do want our houses to be worth more.
Yep.
Right? When we do want our property values to increase. So in a way, you look at that letter, and that house that you bought a year and a half ago is worth a lot more today. You have built equity in that house. That is saying something. I know that the opposite, you may say, well, I wish it had gone down. What we all would love is for our assessed value to go down and for us to sell high.
Yeah.
That's not the real world. The real world is supply and demand and value. So if your house goes up, your house is more valuable, right? And I know you're not gonna sell, you just got here, just
Yep.
like, so I know that may sting a little bit, but I know that those are big numbers, but I want to assure you that on your tax bill, it's not going to be reflected as big numbers. It's going to depend on our tax levy, it's going to depend on our budget. All it means is that your house is assessed at a higher number.
Okay.
And so, in simple math, yes, an increase, even a little increase of a higher number is going to be higher, but remember, it's only 11 or 12% of your tax bill.
Okay, cool. The final question is, can we get the current, current assessment roll of all the homes from the village?
I believe
So
it's
that I
online.
can compare?
It's online.
It's last year's.
I don't know, yeah, can you go up there?
So this is the
Yeah.
year's.
So I'll just answer
Okay.
so people at home can hear. So last year's final assessment roll is online, we left it online, and the tentative roll is online as well, and they're PDF documents that are searchable. So you could put in the section block and lot, you could put in your neighbor's house, and you could search it like that very easily.
Right, so so I'm gonna repeat that. Last year's final roll is on our website? Yes? And this year's tentative roll, which is what you got the letter for, is also there. So you can search your house, you can search my house, you can search anybody's house, and you could see, you could search all 5,000 houses if you want to, and you can see that. And different neighborhoods, depending on market trends, went up slightly different. So you may have gone up 14%, I may have gone up 16%, somebody else may have gone up 12%. There have been years where some didn't go up at all, and again, it's all reflected in home sales, market trends, and comps. Anything else?
And the grievance application is online also.
Okay, and the grievance application is also online, so we certainly encourage you to grieve. If you feel that strongly that your assessed value is incorrect, you absolutely should grieve. We encourage you to grieve. We have an assessment review board just for that, and I encourage you to grieve your school taxes as well. And if you're doing it through a third party already, through one of these large companies, all you need to do is pick up the phone and say, I want my village taxes grieved too. Although our process is pretty easy to do, and you can do it yourself, you can certainly include it there. But remember that, and this is not to discourage anybody from grieving, quite to the opposite. We want to be fair. And what this has allowed us to do is, we have gone from when I got on this board, we paid over $1 million a year in tax certiorari's, meaning we paid people back for over-assessing them. Now, we are in the $200,000 range, which means we're getting closer to what the real assessed value of our properties are, because we are not getting these huge tax certiorari's. The county is, we're not, because our role is much more realistic, because we do it year to year to year to year, and we follow market trends. So, but what I was getting at is, and again, not as a discouragement to grieve, that remember, even if you grieve and you win, what you're going to get is going to be minimal. And I get it, you should pay your fair share, no more, no less, but you're not going to grieve your village taxes and get $1,000 back, right? Because your village taxes are barely over $1,000. Whereas if you grieve your county and school taxes, you could potentially get $1,000, $1,500, $1,700 back. Here, if you grieve, and I know some people grieve just on principle, and absolutely they are entitled to that, and again, they should pay their fair share, the difference is going to be, so even if your property should not have been assessed 14% higher than last year, and it should have been assessed 10% higher than last year, it's going to be literally $2 a month. It's not going to be a large number. But we do have senior citizens, we have people on fixed incomes, and we do also have exemptions for, you know, different classes of people, veterans and senior citizens and things like that. So everyone should avail themselves of that. If you have any questions, come down to Village Hall, see Mr. Rivera, and he'll indicate you in the right direction on our website or within Village Hall itself. Did I forget anything? No. Nope. Mr. Gibbons, did I forget anything?
Nope, that was perfect.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it, thank you.
You sure? All right, well, I thank you for coming down, and I thank you for choosing Mineola, and we hope to see you at those concerts in the summer. Ms. Pardo's working on the dates right now, so, and you'll get to see the fireworks from your backyard, right? You can get to see them. Okay, anybody else on the board? Get anything? Okay, all right. And I apologize if I misspoke. Like I said, I'm not a tax expert and I am not an assessor, but I did my best to explain it, and I think that that's pretty, you know, accurate. But if you have any further questions, please follow up, okay? You and anybody else who's out there, even on Facebook, okay? Great. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public meeting. Motion by trustee Casado. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Clark. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good evening, everyone. Have a great night.